Welcome to Hope for Survival YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. It's December the 5th on a semi-cool East Tennessee day with a lot of wind, about 40 degrees with a low tonight estimated around 15 to 18 degrees. And the sun is shining and the squirrels are running happily in the trees. And life is good here. But I want to talk to you about Hurricane Helene and the continued efforts in the multiple disaster areas to help victims who still need lots of support. They need supplies, they need volunteers, and these areas need donations, whether it's monetarily or resources. Typically, in any disaster, after the first 30 to 45 days, all of these items starts to slow down and dry up. However, the rebuild effort continues long term. And being in winter right now, as the temperatures plummet, and with the hundreds of families that are still living in tents, they are completely dependent upon what resources are donated and brought in to help them survive. And I can't give enough praise to the hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers across all these communities in East Tennessee, Virginia, and North Carolina who are on the ground 7 days a week doing everything they can to help move things along for these victims. And they can only do and provide with what's available. So donations are still desperately needed. Volunteers to move these resources from collection points out into the hills, oftentimes where roads have been washed away, and transportation to these areas is a challenge, and often now by quads and four-wheelers and things of that nature. Some of these areas it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to truck these resources in by a larger vehicle. So we can only do with what is provided to us to take into these areas. And though the donations still are flowing, there's more donations needed. So looking at the big picture, there's this is a long-term relief effort. And if it's not clear to you at this point, these efforts are completely through volunteers. There's minimal to zero government support from local governments, state governments, and definitely no help or support from the federal side. Matter of fact, just in the last few days, the media announced that the government was sending another $250 million to the Ukraine war, and then a day or two later announced that our government was sending $1 billion to aid Africa in impacted disaster regions to help the African people. And I'm not opposed to helping anyone, but I am a firm believer that you have to help your own first and foremost. And right now, $1 billion would tremendously help the tax-paying citizens who are victims of this disaster in some form or fashion. See, there are needs to help people survive daily: shelter, keeping them warm, food, water, clothing, medicinal, and so forth. But there are other parts of this disaster that requires some legal advice because of things that are happening and not happening to protect the rights of the citizens that are impacted. Heavy equipment, oftentimes in these disaster areas, the cleanup portion of the disaster, moving mounds and mounds of debris and structures and large rocks and so forth, requires heavy equipment and operators of the equipment, fuel to run the equipment, and this takes time to coordinate. You have to get the equipment in. Sometimes there's a challenge of getting the equipment into the impacted areas and then having the ability to run the equipment for hours upon hours. There's got to be a coordinated effort of where you're moving the debris to, and so on. And we're seeing this in multiple impacted areas. I see lots and lots of podcasts with discussions and video from disaster areas, and some of them are showing areas of improvement. Some of them there's little movement to improve the disaster zones for reasons that I just mentioned. But watching these videos, if you're on the outside and you don't live in these areas, watching these videos honestly does not serve the disaster areas truly. And what I'm saying is, last week I was in 3 of the disaster areas, and Miss Lucy traveled with me, and it was her first time actually down in the areas where the devastation occurred, and she even commented to me, until you are there and you witness it with your own eyes, you can't grasp the level of depth of the damage, the devastation, how it's impacted the lives of the people, and the vastness of, there's so much damage and covering miles and miles of land across Virginia, Tennessee, East Tennessee, and western North Carolina. So I heard Patera at Appalachia Homestead comment this morning that going into these areas and seeing the degree of devastation and talking and working with the locals who are impacted, once you've gone through that, it changes you. It changes your heart. It changes your mind. And you want to do everything you can to try and better the lives in some way to help these people get back to some form of normalcy in their life. And so much of this can only happen through the continued plea from those of us who are trying to help these folks and these communities by continually reaching out for support to come in different manners for Hope for Survival. We worked the first month to 5-6 weeks in the Elk Mills Poga area and that community. Folks were so generous to donate resources, donate time driving, moving loads, and monetary donations. We were able to procure and deliver over $11,000 in buddy heaters, propane tanks, connector hoses, cookers, amongst other things. And that allowed us to get these items into the hands of the people who need them quicker, with winter coming on. Well, winter is now here. So this morning, I sent a message out to one of our very, very generous provider of donated resources for buddy heaters, propane, and connector hoses again, to get down to the Hampton, Tennessee, and Elk Mills Poga area to help out. There's still need in these areas because of homes that either they don't have electricity yet, or they haven't been able to get propane deliveries because of the damaged roads, and the heavy trucks carrying propane can't make it into where the homes are at. And there's a whole list of reasons why. But the bottom line is there's folks in the homes with no heat. And there's folks in tents with no heat. And there's people in sheds and tiny homes with no heat. So we continue to deliver what we have, and we continue to reach out for more support from you who have been so generous to this point so far. Last week, Miss Lucy and I traveled to Elk Mills, Hampton, and through Damascus, dropping off more support to Brother Ed in his continued repairs to his home. The good news is the goal right now is to get Ed and his family back in their home living by late February to mid-March. There's carpenters that have committed to work through and finish this project. But our support needs to continue to help offset cost of buying all the resources, new flooring, HVAC, a new HVAC system, sheetrock, insulation, lighting. Imagine having to basically rebuild and all the components that go into that. Furniture's going to be coming towards the end to replace everything that was flooded and lost. That's just one of thousands of homes with needs. Many of the folks have to totally rebuild from the ground up. Other projects is getting people out of tents into warm shelters. There's obstacles that's being presented from legal aspects, and what local authorities will allow to go back on land. From the outside looking in, there is the common sense factor is zero. I must say, when you look and you have your own people living in tents, totally dependent upon what resources are carried to them. Um, and authorities say, well, you can't put this on the property, which gets them out of the cold uh, because of red tape and political BS. To me, it's just not acceptable. And when you've been a tax-paying citizen your whole life, and your government will not come to your aid, and they're willing to send $1 billion to a foreign entity over you, is a slap in the face. And I know a lot of folks have a lot of hope with the new administration coming in. That's all great, but it's time to put up or shut up from the current administration and the inbound administration. Even though they are not the current government, elected government in power yet, there are steps the incoming government could be taking. They could have people on the ground. They could be making phone calls and making things happen to show the truth of what is actually happening down in these areas where our citizens are forgotten and neglected and living in freezing temperatures. Okay, and if that were you or your children, you would be wondering why your government is not helping. When you look at the size of government and the outreach of the government on many other type of issues and events, you have to wonder, even though this disaster area is a large area covering many communities on a government scale, it's relatively small when you consider the resources available to the government and a checkbook available to the government that they could help these people. We the people, we have been there for our brothers and sisters in this that are victims in this disaster. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Any of the disaster areas or zones you go into, the number of volunteers showing up from all walks of life, whether for 3 days a week, some of them have been there for the full duration, giving up their own life and their own jobs and their own income to do the right thing and help these people. All right. And like I said, until you go in and you actually see the level of devastation and the long laundry list of needs, from monetary to resources, food, water, medicinal, shelter, clothing, and then heavy equipment, legal representation to these people. It's almost overwhelming, but we have to stay grounded. We can't allow this to overwhelm the volunteers, and we have to be there solid and grounded with a strong heart and mind for these victims to lean on, because right now, truthfully, we are pretty much all they have aside from their faith. Okay, and when you're trying to continue a message of hope and instilling hope, you have to be strong in how you go about doing it. It's the determination and willpower of these victims has been resilient, but they need help. Okay, they when a father looks at his wife and his children and they've been sleeping in a tent and they're freezing cold, and people are bringing food and water and clothes to them or giving them a ride to take a shower at some location, and they have no transportation, and they have no date of when they can move into some form of a warm shelter. It's very, very difficult to maintain hope day after day after day, other than through your faith. So we have to continue on this journey to do our best to support these folks through what's going to be a long winter ahead, to help them keep a strong backbone. And with that, we have to keep a strong backbone. And part of how we, as volunteers, helping keep a strong backbone through our faith, and also continuing to reach out to folks to say, we still need your help, and we still need your help. So I'll be journeying back to Hampton, Tennessee, to visit with Ed next week to deliver more donations to his project. Folks continue to be very generous in helping in this area, but I'm going to be expanding back out again. The last couple weeks I've been focused on Ed's project, but I'm most likely going to expand back out again in trying to get some more relief donated to get some, at a minimum, cold weather resources into the impacted areas. So keep praying for us, and for those donating, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and thank you from the victims who are receiving your blessings. They are so appreciative of your kindness that you would give to them. 100%, they are thankful. So if you would like to continue or like to support our effort at Hope for Survival, email me at preparedness101@protonmail.com. That's preparedness101@protonmail.com. In the subject line, just put support for Ed's project, and that will get my attention, and we can go from there. So thanks for tuning in, and thanks for continuing to watch the Hurricane Helene videos and the information that we're trying to put out to you. Keep praying for all these people that are in the path of devastation that was thrown upon them. They didn't ask for this. They just happened to be in the path of the raging waters and the flood. So we, the people, we must come through again to continue supporting this effort. If it weren't for we, the people, in the hundreds, if not thousands, of churches that's been on the ground, cooking, donating resources, helping people with medicinal needs and so forth, this would be an absolute tragedy. So if you like this video, please hit like. If you have not subscribed to Hope for Survival, please consider doing so. And don't forget to count your blessings, and most of all, always give thanks. Bravo Echo out.